When people think of the fall of Rome, they imagine barbarians at the gates, collapsing legions, or emperors poisoned in palaces. However, empires do not fall solely due to external attacks. They rot from within, and one of the most corrosive forces of all time is always money. Rome did not fall just because of invasions or corruption. It fell because of the collapse of its currency, and the lessons drawn from this collapse remain valid for every modern economy that thinks it can play games with money and get away with it. Let's set the stage. For centuries, the economic backbone of Rome was the silver denarius. First minted around 201 BC, this coin was made of nearly pure silver and was trusted throughout the empire and beyond. Roman soldiers were paid with it, merchants demanded it, and ordinary people stored their wealth in it. The denarius was not just money, it was trust in metal form. The power of the empire and the value of the currency were intertwined. As long as people believed in Rome, they believed in its money. But running an empire is expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts had to be built, and wars had to be funded. By the 2nd century AD, Rome's resources were running low. Forced to defend its borders against Germanic tribes, the Parthians in the east, and internal conflicts, the Romans turned to an ancient method when tax revenues failed to cover military expenditures: debasement. Instead of taxing citizens more, they reduced the silver content in the denarius. The numbers tell the whole story. Under Emperor Augustus, who ruled at the beginning of the empire, the denarius contained about 95% silver. By the early 3rd century, during the reign of Caracalla, this ratio dropped to around 50%. By the mid-3rd century, under Emperor Gallienus, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. A coin that was once made entirely of precious metal had turned into a silver-plated bronze disc. People could see and feel the difference. Following this came inflation. Because money was no longer tied to real value, prices soared. A measure of wheat that once cost a single denarius could suddenly cost dozens of denarii. This was not an abstract theory. It ruined the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay to cover rising costs. Merchants stopped accepting worthless coins, preferring barter or payment in gold. Local economies reverted directly to trade. Because the currency was no longer trusted, commerce ground to a halt. The more trust eroded, the more cheap money emperors minted, hoping that volume would replace value. This turned into a vicious cycle that has been repeated in countless inflations ever since. The crisis peaked during the period known as the Crisis of the 3rd Century, between 235 and 284 AD. Rome experienced nearly 50 years of chaos, invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors rose and fell at a dizzying pace, sometimes ruling for only a few months before being assassinated. Behind the political drama lay a broken financial system. Taxes were increasingly demanded in coins that had less and less value. Instead of paying taxes, farmers abandoned their lands and left. Trade networks shattered, and the Roman government tried desperate measures to keep the system afloat, ranging from price controls to forced labor obligations. None of them worked. Emperor Diocletian tried to stop the bleeding. In 301 AD, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, which fixed the prices of over 1,000 goods and services, from grain to laborers' wages. Violators faced death. This edict was a disaster. Prices could not be kept under control. When money itself becomes worthless, the currency is replaced by decree. The black market exploded, and official trade faced a near-total collapse. People quickly learned that laws cannot fix broken money. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius entirely. Constantine the Great introduced the solidus around 312 AD, a gold coin of consistent purity. This provided some stability and lasted for centuries in the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire. But by then, the Western Empire had already been mortally weakened. The debasement of the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic core. Armies had now become unsustainable, trade networks were broken, and trust had vanished. The fall of Rome was not a single event, but a long process of unraveling. The collapse of the currency was one of its sharpest points. What does this mean for us today? It means that the destruction of money always means the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could deceive its people by issuing coins that looked the same but held less real value. Modern governments think they can do the same by printing paper money, manipulating interest rates, or inflating away debts. But the result is always the same. The public pays the price. Wealth vanishes, and trust collapses. Rome learned this lesson the hard way, and if we ignore it, we will do the same. History continued to teach after Rome. Every major inflationary crisis since then has repeated the exact same pattern. Governments devalue money to cover their costs. Elites protect themselves with real assets, and ordinary people go bankrupt. The Roman currency crisis is the earliest and full-scale example, blueprint of collapse. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the echoes are deafening. After World War I, Germany faced crushing reparations under the Treaty of Versailles. The government printed marks to meet its obligations, thinking it could cover its debts just as Rome once minted more money. By 1923, hyperinflation was spreading rapidly. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark before the war cost more than 200 billion marks by the autumn of that year. People carried their wages home in wheelbarrows. Pensioners starved as their life savings evaporated. And just like in Rome, those with debts saw them wiped out by inflation, while those with real assets, land, factories, foreign currencies emerged stronger. Money became meaningless, and economic desperation fueled the political extremism that paved the way for Hitler's rise. Zimbabwe followed the same path in the early 2000s, faced with land seizures, falling production, and rising debt. The government turned to the printing press. By 2008, inflation reached a mind-boggling level, an annual rate of 89.76 billion%. Prices doubled every day. Shops could not change price tags fast enough. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its currency entirely, forcing its citizens to transact in US dollars or South African rand. Once again, a government thought it could cheat reality. Once again, the people paid the price. But you don't just have to look at extremes. Even in modern developed economies, the Roman model lives on. Consider the United States. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, severing the last link between the currency and a tangible anchor. From that moment on, the dollar became what economists call a fiat currency, backed not by gold, but by trust in the government. And just like in Rome, the temptation to overspend emerged. Methods of money creation became irresistible. In the following decades, debts ballooned, the money supply expanded, and inflation became a constant undercurrent. While we haven't seen wheelbarrows full of cash, we have seen a steady erosion of purchasing power. $1 in 1971 could buy things that cost more than $6 today. The coins look the same. The banknotes look the same. But their value has been hollowed out. The trick is always the same. Governments disguise inflation as growth. They tell citizens that higher wages mean prosperity, even as costs rise faster. They present debt as an investment, even when it funds consumption. They point to rising stock markets as proof of wealth, even though the majority has little to no stake in it. Just like the Roman emperors, they silently extract value from every coin, every banknote, and every salary, while claiming that fundamentally nothing has changed. What makes this dangerous today is that the scale is global. The fall of Rome was an imperial crisis. Weimar's hyperinflation was national, was local. Today, however, the whole world is run on fiat currencies, massive debts, and central banks ready to print trillions of dollars at the first sign of crisis. This means that the next collapse will not be limited to a single empire or country. It will ripple globally. And if history is any guide, those who suffer will not be the asset-owning elites, but the millions of people who rely on salaries, pensions, and savings denominated in increasingly fragile currencies. So, what lesson should you as an individual draw from Rome's currency crisis? First, understand that inflation is not an accident. It is a policy. It is a silent tax that has destroyed empires for 2,000 years. Second, realize that real wealth is not found in numbers on paper or a screen, but in assets that hold value when money is worthless. Land, skills, productive businesses, resources. Third, never assume that stability is permanent. Romans in the 1st century would have laughed if told their money would one day be worthless. Germans in 1913 would have mocked the idea of wheelbarrows full of cash. Zimbabweans in the 1980s thought their independence promised prosperity, but in every case, the same story unfolded. The fall of Rome reminds us that financial systems can collapse, first gradually, then suddenly. As trust erodes, money evaporates. When money loses its reality, society itself begins to dissolve. Contracts break down. Trade collapses, armies dissolve, and governments lose their legitimacy. The barbarians at the gate might finish the job, but the real killer is always inside the treasury. And here is the crucial point. History does not repeat itself, but if you do not understand it, it crushes you the same way. The Roman currency crisis was not just about bad emperors or greedy elites. It was about the fragility of money when abused by power. And that fragility has never gone away. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. The answers lie within history.